The mattress still held the imprint of her form, yet she was not there. This absence jolted me awake. No buzzing alarm, no sudden noise, only the draft whispering against my skin as I reached for the warmth that once signified her presence. What greeted me was emptiness. Cold, undisturbed sheets whispered a tale long before my eyes fluttered open. I remained still for a while, gazing upwards, listening intently. Not for footsteps, not for her voice, simply for any sign, a hint that my intuition was misleading me, that I wasn't already too late. But the residence was silent, chillingly so. Her hairbrush lay untouched, her cardigan was missing. Her beloved cup, adorned with a floral pattern she refused to part with, sat in the sink, bearing the faint traces of recent coffee stains. She had vanished again. No message, no justification, no apology. And I hadn't sought one in weeks, for deep down I had already acknowledged the truth. You don't require surveillance when your instincts are hollering. You don't need tangible proof when the space between you grows dense with fabrications. You don't need to witness someone in the act when they've ceased feigning concern about it. Nonetheless, I verified the front entrance. Still secured from within, she had utilized the garage once more. Always the garage. I accessed the app on my cellular device, the one she was unaware I had installed on the secondary vehicle. And there it was, 3:07 a.m. The silver vehicle parked on Elderwood Avenue. The address was unfamiliar, but the postal code sent a jolt through me. It was situated across town, near the Botanical Gardens, a place we never had cause to visit. I zoomed in on the aerial image. It depicted a bungalow, gray siding, dark shutters, devoid of exterior illumination. But I knew better than to presume that darkness implied inactivity within. I stood barefoot in the cooking area, fixated on the display as her treachery unfolded in real time elsewhere. My thoughts drifted back to the beginning. Not the unfaithfulness, the quietude. Each night, she would turn away, facing the wall, drawing the duvet up to her collarbone, as if I were a gale she wished to ward off. Each night, I cautioned myself not to internalize it. Perhaps she was simply fatigued. Perhaps individuals evolve, and it isn't anyone's fault. But that's incorrect. Sometimes individuals opt to evolve when they believe you'll never depart. They perceive your devotion as a cage. They can reside atop a gilded prison. But I was no longer willing to await the finale. I would craft it myself, and she would peruse every word with trembling digits. She was simply unaware of it yet. By the time she arrived, I had already repositioned the secondary vehicle in our driveway. She didn't even take notice. Upon entering through the garage entrance, she dropped her keys onto the surface with that listless, uncaring clatter, emitting a soft sigh as if returning from a day of pampering. Not a clandestine rendezvous. I sat in the living room, the light extinguished, illuminated solely by the display of my laptop. She paused upon seeing me, as if I were a painting hung in the incorrect chamber. "You're awake." Her voice was subdued, not remorseful, not anxious, simply light. Feigned. I nodded. That was all. She poured herself a glass of water, consuming it rapidly, then commenced ascending the stairs barefoot. Her gait unhurried and casual, as if she had no notion I knew she wasn't at Henderson's. As she had previously claimed, I didn't follow. I didn't pose inquiries. I waited until I detected the flow of liquid in the bathing area, the predictable habit of one endeavoring to cleanse the indiscretion of another from their skin. Then I unveiled the photograph. I had captured it while she was absent. Off the GPS coordinates, zoomed in on the mailbox sufficiently to capture the surname emblazoned across the metal in hand-painted characters, L. Hoffman. That moniker initially held no significance, but something about it lodged in my chest. I commenced digging. It didn't require much time. Hoffman was an instructor, creative writing, taught evening sessions at Brookside College, divorced, notorious for forming overly close bonds with her pupils, according to online reviews that were equally flirtatious and spiteful. I recognized her face from one of the campus announcements affixed to our chiller last autumn. The one she asserted was solely for a poetry gathering she had been invited to by a colleague. Poetry gathering, indeed. My emotions weren't wounded. They weren't even mildly affected any longer. They were composed, akin to a person witnessing a locomotive plunge off a precipice after already surviving the catastrophe. But what stung wasn't the disloyalty. It was the impersonation. The manner in which she persisted in preparing breakfast for two, despite not touching hers. The manner in which she persisted in leaving a folded blanket on my section of the mattress. That evening I didn't rest. I laid adjacent to her, her dorsal side facing me, and observed the forms on the ceiling stretching and shrinking with the passing of lights outside. The planet continued. Time elapsed, but my contemplations remained fixated on her sigh, her vacant pupils, the moniker Hoffman, and how trivial I had become in my own narrative. She mumbled something in her slumber. A single syllable, Laura. I almost chuckled aloud in the shadows. Because the absurdity was so profound, it almost felt like a present, a moniker I wasn't meant to know, whispered by a woman who assumed she was escaping unscathed. And yet, I didn't confront her, not yet. Because if she intended to fabricate, I desired to observe how far she was willing to proceed, how many sunrises she could beam at me across the cooking area island, how many hours she could roll away from me without even comprehending the harm she inflicted. She didn't realize it yet, but every instant from now on was proof. Every flicker of her eyelids, every gasp, every word, and I was constructing something she'd never forget, something serene, the kind of conclusion that doesn't roar, simply stings eternally. There's something agonizing about realizing that the woman sleeping beside you laughs more freely with a stranger than she does with you. I overheard it inadvertently. Or, perhaps, Providence thrust it in my face. It was a Thursday midday. She had taken the day as a break, professed she required time to clear her head, said she might sketch, take a lengthy stroll, endeavor to experience something once more. I didn't contest. I was already beyond attempting to persuade her to remain connected. I departed for my shift. I oversaw shipping at a distribution center just outside the town, but I circled back 10 minutes later, feigning I had misplaced my identification. I hadn't. I parked down the block, traversed the alleyway, and entered through the side entrance with the rickety joint I had intended to mend last year, and I discerned it from the back quarter. Her chortle. Not the one she grants associates. Not the artificial one she grants servers. No, this was the unadulterated one. The one she once directed at me during our initial years. It was affectionate, relaxed, even slightly silly. I hadn't discerned that sound in months, perhaps a year. Then arrived the voice, male, composed, not excessively coquettish, but self-assured. I stood immobilized in the passageway, one pedal on the ceramic, one on the wooden, listening like an apparition. I didn't charge in. I didn't slam the entrance. I simply listened. They were conversing about melodies, plastic circles. A Marvin Gaye record she always asserted was excessively somber when I spun it during dinners. Now she was giggling about how overlooked it was. I didn't catch his moniker. She didn't utter it, but I recognized who it was. I ambled back outside peacefully and sat in my motorized vehicle for 40 minutes, simply observing the building. Nobody departed, implying either he sneaked in before I arrived back, or worse, he never exited the prior evening. I didn't return to my place of work that day. I traveled to the stream. It's approximately 40 minutes northward. Nothing ornate, simply water, woods, a few fishing jetties. Nobody asked questions out there. I sat on the front of my vehicle and fixated on the ripples until my drink grew frigid and my fingers commenced quaking. Not out of fury, out of sadness. You don't mourn the event. You mourn the elimination, the gradual superseding of who you were in someone's existence. By the time I drove to my residence, she was unaccompanied once more, mane damp, donning her plush orange tunic, the one she solely donned when she was endeavoring to appear effortlessly guiltless. She glimpsed up from her brew and grinned. "Hey, you're back beforehand." I fixated on her. She fixated back, and for an instant, simply one slender instant, I discerned it. Hesitation. Her pupils flickered slightly too gradually. Her extremity hovered above her mug for too long. She was scrutinizing my face, endeavoring to guess how much I was aware of. "I forgot my identification," I declared in a monotonous tone, then received a call. "They didn't require me." She bobbed her vertex. "I simply remained indoors all day," she responded. Tidied up a bit, took a snooze. "Come on." I grinned because that was the instant I recognized I no longer had to catch her in the conduct any longer. She had already unveiled herself. She wasn't fabricating to safeguard anything. She was fabricating because she surmised I would never perform anything about it. And that's when I concluded I would, but not with exclamations, not with stunning exits. No, my strategy necessitated being tranquil. I necessitated becoming imperceptible in simply the accurate mode. So I commenced enacting my character better. I kissed her forepart when she sneezed. I inquired about her artificial siestas. I complimented the dishes I understood were cooked to impress another individual. And she grinned, surmising I had succumbed for it. But I wasn't endeavoring to regain her affection. I was permitting her to compose a narrative, a deceitful one, because when it crumbles, it'll wound her even more to recognize she built it, with both hands, while I watched in tranquility. And the punchline, she won't even view it forthcoming. She deposited her cellular device on the cooking area top, not unintentionally, not if you know her akin to I do. Giselle doesn't omit things. She double-checks bolts, cleans counters doubly, and smooths trousers. So when she left her cellular device, display up, unlocked, I recognized it was a bait. She desired me to view it. She desired to regulate what I viewed. There were 2 opened messages on the display. One was from Mila, the friend she always utilized as camouflage. The message was adequately innocent, something about attempting a new yoga class. The other was from a digits recorded as Caleb Professional Life. It said, "I'll contact you afterward when it's harmless." Harmless, not tranquil, not liberated, not unaccompanied, harmless. It mirrored in my heart akin to a bell. I didn't contact the cellular device. I simply fixated on it for a handful of ticks too long and then ambled away. But the seed was already seeded. She was assessing to observe how curious I had grown, evaluating the profundity of my suspicion. She desired to understand how adjacent I was to fracturing because she was commencing to stress, and she should have been. That evening, she requested to view a film with me, something idiotic and passionate that I recognize she detests. She nestled on the settee, rested her vertex on my deltoid, even reached for my palm halfway through akin to some scene from a marriage reawakening pamphlet, but her pupils persisted darting toward the passageway every few ticks, akin to clockwork. That's where her cellular device was charging. I didn't sight it. I grinned during the film, chuckled in the accurate sections, declared, "I overlooked this," in the gentlest vocalization I could discover, and she leaned into it. For the initial occasion in months, she initiated a kiss. It tasted akin to guilt. She wasn't reconnecting. She was resetting the timepiece, pacifying the atmosphere beforehand, the subsequent tempest she contemplated to evaporate into. And I permitted her. I granted her the occasion because the more she surmised I was succumbing for it, the more careless she would evolve into. And careless individuals depart proof. The subsequent early hours, she said she'd be at Henderson's for a handful of hours. Simply catching up, she said, dusting bits from her tunic, circumventing sight communication. I bobbed my vertex. She departed at 10:16 a.m. By 10:24, I had extracted her cellular device data, utilizing the mirrored account I had established 6 weeks prior. Beforehand, I even understood the moniker Hoffman. The GPS signal wasn't anywhere adjacent to Henderson's. She was at the identical duplex, Elderwood Avenue. Simply this occasion, she remained longer, 5 hours. I observed it all in real ticks from my motorized vehicle, parked a block away behind a column of bushes. I observed the frontage opening unveiled halfway around noontime. I discerned a man's forearm resting casually on the carcass, holding a burning cylinder. It was the forearm of someone at ease, not someone concealing. I didn't extract myself. I didn't capture illustrations. I sat there with the windows upward, AC off, perspiration constructing on my dorsal side, and conjured everything I could be performing. But I wasn't here to explode. I was here to hear, because individuals always surmise disloyalty ends with detection. But it doesn't. It ends with the determination you render afterward, and I had already rendered mine. I drove to my residence, accepted a frigid shower, and scrubbed my matrimony finger band with a brush until the metal shone akin to it had never been contacted. Then I slipped it back on my extremity and grinned at the mirroring because I comprehended something she didn't. When deceivers evolve at ease, they always proceed excessively distant, and I was about to render it so she couldn't recite which sections of her existence were authentic any longer. It commenced with a mirroring, not metaphorically, a real one. The relic oval mirroring in our upstairs passageway. Giselle cherished it, discovered it at a swap meet the initial summer we migrated in, said it rendered the location feel less akin to a lodgings and more akin to a reminiscence. She didn't comprehend I moved it 2 units to the left the previous week, simply adequately. She ambled past it 5 occasions in one sun and never remarked until Saturday. She halted mid-stride, constricted her pupils, and requested, "Did you relocate this?" I quaked my vertex. Why would I? She fixated on it a tick longer and then declared nothing, but I discerned the force wave across her face, a diminutive fracture in her carefully rehearsed separation. The mirroring wasn't simply glass, it was a trial, not to view if she remarked the mobility, but to view if she confided in her own insight of what was authentic. It functioned more effectively than I surmised. By Sunday she was overcorrecting, posing more inquiries, endeavoring to be existing, offering to prepare repast, even though she always detested the scent of breakfasts. That's when I comprehended I had her off equilibrium, and I was solely commencing. The subsequent mobility was odors. I altered my scented fluid slightly, a perfume she utilized to congratulate back when she still remarked what I donned. This occasion I chose something bolder, unfamiliar. She wrinkled her organ when I leaned in to kiss her deltoid. "New scented fluids?" she requested casual. I grinned. "Do you cherish it?" She paused too long. "It's dissimilar." Precisely. Because I was dissimilar, simply not in the mode she surmised. Afterward that evening, I relocated the mirroring back. I left my timepiece on the bathing area sink, even though I never detach it there. I rearranged 2 of the volumes on her ledge alphabetically, as opposed to by color. I switched the positions of the vino goblets in the bureau. None of it injurious, none of it tumultuous, but simply adequately to construct friction. And when she glimpsed at me, there was something new in her pupils, something anxious. She was questioning actuality, not because I was deceiving her, but because she had constructed her new existence on a mendacity, so brittle it couldn't manage even the slightest press. I permitted it to simmer. I permitted her to sit in the tranquil between inquiries she didn't understand how to pose. Then I performed something minuscule, guiltless. I printed out a net communication verification for a booking at a lake scene log, the one we utilized to rent every October. I left it on the cooking area top where she could discover it, but I didn't utter a note about it. That evening, she upraised it. "You booked the log?" I glimpsed, puzzled. "Which log?" She held up the document. "Oh," I declared, "that was from the preceding year. Simply forgot to erase it." I could almost listen to her cerebrum rewiring itself in real ticks. She didn't comprehend whether I was fabricating or not. And that was the intention, because now she was the one second-guessing what was accurate. She proceeded tranquil for the residue of the evening. No artificial embraces, no four-part kisses. I feigned to slumber while she fixated on the ceiling. I could experience her pulsating through the mattress. I wasn't injuring her. I wasn't disgracing her. I was simply granting her a flavor of what she had granted me for months. Uncertainty. Simply this occasion, she didn't even possess the solace of guiltlessness to recoil on. She had constructed a fortress of deceits. And now every creak in the flooring, every alteration in habit, every missing covering felt akin to, it might be the commencement of her exposition. And I was nowhere adjacent to done. There utilized to be an illustration on the passageway ledge. Giselle and I, Cabo San Lucas, our third year joined. I'm in an absurd straw hat. She's holding a cocktail with that diminutive document umbrage sticking out. It was the solely illustration of us in the building that ever glimpsed genuinely delighted. She never cited it, but I comprehend she cherished that illustration. She dusted around it every Saturday. Not a vocalization, not a fuss, simply a cautious forearm circumventing the glass. The previous week, I eradicated it. I didn't conceal it. I didn't blaze it. I located it inside the lower cabinet of the desk in our customer quarter, the cabinet she never unveils. Then I waited 3 days, not a citation, but I discerned her glimpse at the unfilled area every occasion she ambled by. Her pupils flickered, then proceeded on, but something in her altered, a flinch at the corner of her buckle opening. The smallest frown, the kind individuals don when they mislay a phrase halfway through. On Thursday, she relocated the lamp 2 units to the left to cover the unfilled area. Akin to the absence was excessively tumultuous. That evening, she requested if I still held any ancient holiday illustrations. I shrugged. I surmise most are net. She grinned a little too tightly and proceeded to chamber beforehand. I remained downstairs because I comprehended she'd verify, and she did. I discerned the gentle creak of the customer quarter flooring, the one by the skylight that always betrays bare appendages. I conjured her unveiling the cabinet, viewing the carcass, recognizing I hadn't mislaid it or fractured it, that I had chosen to eradicate it. Peacefully, when she proceeded to bed, she didn't declare anything, but she left the bathing area illumination on all evening. She never performs that. She was unraveling thread by thread, but I wasn't performing it for vengeance, not to penalize her. I necessitated her to experience something, anything, because after months of affecting freeze, I'd almost mislaid what it signified to be glimpsed at akin to a person as opposed to a placeholder. And then it transpired Saturday, early hours. She was supposed to encounter Mila again. That mendacity was growing exhausted. She stood at the mirroring, curling her mane, humming off prime akin to she utilized to when we possessed authentic intentions. But her representation, it granted her away. Her pupils weren't concentrated. Her grin persisted, diminishing. She was dressing for warfare, not for early hours repast. She departed at 11:02. I waited 5 minutes, then ambled into the bathing area. Her cellular device wasn't there, but her computerized timepiece was synced to her situation, Elderwood Avenue. Again, this occasion, I didn't simply drive. I ambled. I parked 3 blocks distant beneath a expired oak tree, threw on a round cap, and took the lengthy course. I didn't proceed to his entrance. I didn't pound. I stood across the lane, and I watched. She arrived out onto the platform around 1:00 p.m., holding a goblet of vino, chortling about something I couldn't hear. She kissed him on the deltoid. Not zealous, not hopeless. Simply at ease, akin to they'd performed it 100 occasions beforehand. I captured an illustration, not to utilize, not to transmit, but to recall what disloyalty. Glimpses akin to when it's so casual it omits to conceal. That evening when she proceeded back, I was baking confections. Chocolate bit, her favored. She blinked, disoriented. You're baking. I was in the disposition, I declared. Recollect when we utilized to perform this? She grinned. I overlooked this, she whispered. And in that instant, as she outstretched to hug me, I sensed the strangest thing. Not agony, not fury, but authority. Because I comprehended what she'd performed that sun, and she comprehended what I might know. And from now on, every kindness I offered would terrify her, because she no longer comprehended which rendition of me was standing in frontage of her, the husband she betrayed, or the guy gradually evolving into her judgment. Sunday early hours utilized to be hallowed. We'd slumber in, prepare repast jointly, turn on smooth music or ancient plastic circles, and feign the planet outside didn't exist. Giselle cherished those early hours. She utilized to declare they were the solely occasion she didn't experience akin to she was constantly acting. I surmise that's what rendered this Sunday so faultless, because for the initial occasion in years, I wasn't acting either. She descended in an oversized tunic, one of mine, actually, and attempted to feign everything was typical. She poured Java akin to her appendages weren't quaking, kissed me on the deltoid akin to her lips weren't guilty, and performed trivial communication akin to we hadn't peacefully declared war in opposite angles of the building. I listened, I grinned, and I handed her a catalog of things I contemplated to perform around the building. Coat the boundary, arrange the depository, mend the back entrance joint. She glimpsed at it and blinked. You're settling, she declared with a chortle. I simply desire to render the location experience accurate again. She didn't request what I signified by again. She simply bobbed her vertex, grinned, and fixated on the catalog a little too long. That midday, I relocated her matrimony robe out of the cabinet and into the loft. I didn't conceal it. I didn't pack it. I simply located it on the wooden holder beneath the safeguarding document. Exposed. Discernible. So, if she ever proceeded up there, it would greet her akin to an apparition at the peak of the ascents. Afterward that evening, I discerned her rustling through the chamber cabinet. She didn't cite the missing robe, but she commenced donning more paint in the sunsets. Not for me, for whoever she surmised she was tricking. I complimented her once, simply to trial her. She didn't declare thank you, simply fixated on me akin to I'd declared something in another language. On Monday, I took the break as a day off of work and went to the trust company. It wasn't stunning, simply adjustments. Accounts unlinked, new codes, digital documents transmitted to my secluded email, the kind of readiness that doesn't render resonance until it's far too departed to undo. By the occasion I proceeded to my residence, Giselle had illuminated tapers in the living quarter, real ones, the kind she solely utilized during anniversaries or power blackouts. I surmised we could converse tonight, she declared, not meeting my pupils. About what? Us? I paused. You signify what's left of us? She winced, simply a little, then chuckled. Don't be stunning. I tilted my vertex. That's rich. She blinked, captured it. She was trialing borders now, assessing to view if I would confront her, explode, demand the accuracy. But I didn't, because she didn't merit my inquiries any longer. She merited my absence. I stood up, ambled to the cooking area, and extracted something from the cabinet. A cardinal. Her extra-motorized vehicle cardinal. The one she surmised I mislaid the preceding year. I located it gently on the table and declared nothing. She fixated on it, then back at me, and in that tranquility something fractured. Not detectably, not tumultuously, but deeply. Her frame was still facing forward, but I could experience her psyche shifting backward, akin to she was mentally retracing every mendacity to calculate out which one I had. Captured. I'm proceeding for a amble, I declared. She bobbed her vertex too rapidly, and that was when I comprehended. She was unraveling quicker than she comprehended how to cover it up, because when someone spends months turning their backs to you in bed, they surmise they've already won the distant sport. But they omit one thing. When you turn away adequately lengthy, the individual behind you evaporates. And when you finally roll over, they're already departed. She simply hadn't recognized I had left yet, but she would soon. I didn't depart with shouting. I didn't pack in the mid of the hours, and I didn't compose her a document occupied with stunning monologues or acerbic attestations. I simply waited for the accurate instant when the tranquility between us wasn't occupied with agony any longer, but peace. It arrived on a Wednesday early hours. Giselle was brushing her teeth, humming some offbeat melody, donning the identical robe she always donned after her yoga evenings. She glimpsed at me in the mirroring, grinned half-heartedly, and declared, "You're tranquil lately." I dried my appendages and declared, "I'm done." She froze. "What?" "I'm done acting, feigning, expounding, hoping." She fixated on me akin to, I was speaking from a dream. "Wait, where is this forthcoming from?" I tilted my vertex, not in annoyance, but in bewilderment. "You persist requesting where it's forthcoming from, but you never once requested where I proceeded." She didn't declare anything, simply stood there, brush in extremity, dripping foam into the sink. I turned, ambled into the chamber, picked up my overnight sack already packed with the basic requirements, and zipped it peacefully. No big traveling bag, no carton of recollections, simply a clean break. As I passed the entrance, she finally discovered her vocalization. "Silas, this isn't adequate." I paused at that, then turned. "No," I declared gently. "It's finally adequate. I granted you every hours of my tranquility. You granted me every sun of your distance, and now I'm granting both of us something we haven't possessed in years." "What's that?" she whispered. "A prospect to halt fabricating." I ambled out without slamming the entrance. The atmosphere outside was frigid, honest, the kind of frigid that didn't feign to be anything else. By noontime, I had checked into a diminutive Airbnb by the coastline. Nothing ornate. A desk, a skylight, a seat that didn't creak when I leaned back to contemplate. And that evening, for the initial occasion in what felt akin to a living, I rested on the accurate section of the mattress. My section, no one turned away. No secrets hummed in the shadows. No artificial, "I'm simply exhausted," or "let's converse tomorrow." Simply calmness, tranquil, honest calmness. In the early hours, I brewed a goblet of dark Java, stepped out onto the veranda, and watched the sun ascend over the liquid, golden, illuminated entire. And I recognized something. She may have betrayed me, but I was the one who salvaged me. And that more than anything was the authentic conclusion. Not the rupture, not the unfaithfulness, but the tranquil return to myself. The rendition of me that existed beforehand, all the inquiries, all the tranquility, all the evenings expended questioning what I'd performed incorrectly. He's back now. And this occasion I won't permit anyone turn their backs on him.